but that was good. I just did a 20-minute video and forgot to press record. So this is take two. There's two things I wanted to talk about. First thing was the caravan crisis and how are we getting to the end of that. And also there's been a change of personnel at Swift, which is quite interesting. I had a couple of real jaw-dropping moments when I was speaking to a colleague of mine who'd been up to the preview for the new stuff ahead of the show next week. So caravan crisis, you may well say, well, I haven't had a caravan crisis. If you bought a caravan a few years ago and you've been using it, then really it's kind of not, it's not to do with the actual end user. It's more to do with the manufacturers and with the dealers. As you're probably aware, we've seen some big high profile dealers go into administration, and I heard a figure last week that was quite shocking, that around about 40 had actually ceased trading. Now, whether that's into administration or whether it's just the market squeezing and there's just not enough people buying caravans in a certain area, so people just give up, it's kind of what I've done. I've slowed down. I sell a few caravans, but I've stopped running the workshop and I've stopped running the shop, and I just sell a few secondhand now, and I've kind of diversified into storage containers. So I think there's a lot of businesses that just kind of moved away from it because the market contracted and there just wasn't the numbers of people buying caravans. Now, if you're luckily I'm small enough that I can diversify and change the way I do things, and it's just me. I don't have to worry about anyone else. It's just a decision that I have to make. So it's a lot easier for me to kind of move and change what I'm doing. If you're a big dealership and you've been operating for a long period of time and you've got several different directors and things, it's a lot harder to steer that ship away from any trouble. So Titanic hitting the iceberg. But I think some dealers we have lost, and they've been taken over and resurfaced, and another guys or been bought out by someone else. So I think that crisis was this time last year was at its height. As we came in out of 2023, I certainly noticed that it was harder to sell caravans. I had 7 left, kind of going into August, which I don't normally have. So I made a decision to not take on 2024 caravans, which was probably the best thing I've ever done. And I thought that the market was shrinking and it wasn't looking good for the next year. Now, it's easy for me to do that because it's my decision. I think with a lot of other dealers, they just ploughed on regardless because they were selling caravans, and it's a smaller blip. Like to me, 7 caravans was a massive issue, but to other dealerships, whether it was relative, whether they had 70 left rather than 7, I don't know, but they didn't seem to see that the market was slowing down. Now, again, hindsight is a marvelous thing. That was what did happen, but you have to be able to see if it was going to happen. And I think that because we'd come out of COVID and it was been great for 21, 22, 23, it was just, 24 will be the same. So I think a lot of dealers put in big number orders for 2024, and then of course the cost of living crisis kicked in, all the stuff going on around the world kicked in, and people really got scared and they stopped buying things, and not just caravans, but a lot of things as well. So as we were in 2024, people just stopped buying caravans and some big numbers were being produced. I don't think the manufacturers had seen it, so they were still producing a fairly high number, so they then had to kind of get the dealers to take those, and they were kind of throwing product at the dealers that they had to take, and then by the end of the year 2024 there was a lot of stock still around and forecourts full up and finance lines full up. And that's what happened with some of the bigger dealers, is if you've got a £4 or £5 million finance line and you haven't sold it through, then come August, September, that's when the finance companies want their money back. That's when you've got to start paying them off. And if you don't pay them off, you have to pay interest. And some of those are £200 or £300 a month on the interest. If you've got 60 or 70 caravans sat there with £3 million or whatever happens to be, that's a lot of money. So that is what has happened. And I think there was a lot of twitchy conversations were being had between the manufacturers and some dealer principals this time last year, because the manufacturers then want you to take 2025. When you got a forecourt for the 24 stuff you can't sell, you have to start distress selling it and you're losing money. So with that, you've got a huge amount of money invested in something that's on the forecourt and you're not making any money, and even worse, you're actually losing money on it just to get rid of it. Then that's not a good position to be in, and that's when the cash flow kind of all crumbles, and that's the end of that. So I think as we went to 2025, I think that a lot of the dealers were saying, no, we just can't take those kind of numbers, we'll take the stock and that's it, because I've got to wash everything through. And then the manufacturers have to kind of wear that and just kind of work their way through that as well. So again, to use the Titanic thing again, it is like steering the Titanic. It takes a year or two for people to realize that is what you've got to do and stop producing caravans. So by then it's too late, because they have to put all their orders in beforehand, so they have to really guess what's going to happen. And with everything that did happen, obviously 2024 the market kind of ground to a bit of a halt. So where we are now, I think if the dealers have kind of got to where they are now and they're happy and they've washed through some of the 2024s and 25s, now there certainly are 24s still out there, and you can get a fantastic bargain on those. And the 25s, they already started distress selling 25s very early, just to get rid of them, to kind of reset in this year for 2026. So if you had 25 product on the forecourt, you pretty much started giving it away soon, early, just to get rid of it. Now the manufacturers have slowed down their production, so we're back in a kind of a seller's market rather than the buyer's market. So hopefully now in 2026, a lot of dealers will just be taking on the demos, and they won't be putting in huge stock orders because it's too risky, especially because there's still quite a bit of stock on the forecourts out there as well. But it's in a much better place to be in. If you've got to this far, I think we're going to be all right. I don't think we're going to see any other big dealerships go under, because I think the worst of it is gone. Also, if you are a bigger dealership, if you had a network of motorhomes, the motorhomes were pretty strong and they were selling well. So I think you weren't selling so many caravans, but if you were selling more motorhomes, there's more money in that. So I think that's probably what's got a lot of the bigger dealerships over that hump of the caravan sales slumping, is that the market for the motor caravans was strong, because if you're buying 50 or 60,000 pounds, over to 100,000 pounds and plus on a motorhome, you're not so worried about the cost of living crisis. So that market was still pretty strong. So I think, going into 2026, the manufacturers have slowed down. They're not forcing the dealers to take on swathes of stock that they'd already manufactured, or that they had to manufacture because they committed to contracts already. And the dealers can now think, right, okay, what are we going to do? I think this is going to be 2026. The figures that we're going to get at the end of 26 are going to be, I think, the reset that I've been talking about. That the market needed a reset. It needed to wash through all the old stuff because of the overproduction. Now we're getting to the point where we're going to have a reset, and I think this will be the new norm. So the 2026 product figures, whatever they're going to be, I think that'll be a gauge of what will carry on in the future. And I think it will be a marked reduction from what we've had in previous years. Now, obviously, it's very difficult to know what it was because of COVID. We had this kind of peak and a trough, and a kind of now it's kind of leveling out. So I think the caravan industry crisis is coming to a kind of a it's certainly over the hump and it's leveling out. I still think that there are still issues out there, but I think that as the customers get used to the new norm with cost of living crisis, because the things aren't fluctuating like they were. I mean, every time you went to the supermarket, it seemed to go up. Every time you had a new contract for your phone or for electricity, it's gone up. I think that's kind of leveling out a little bit, and that gives us confidence to know that it's not going to change, so you can budget. If you know that something's going to be like that for the next 5 or 6 years, you can budget. The problem is we didn't know it was going to go up or not, and it certainly wasn't going to come down. So the thought was, in a fear market, that it's going to go up, and therefore the one thing you're not going to do if everything's going to go up is spend a lot of money on something that you don't really need, like a new caravan. So hopefully some confidence has come back into the market because things are a bit more stable, and then that will prove that people will think, right, okay, we're over that, let's spend that money on that caravan. And sometimes we see a little bit of a peak after a significant trough, because people have held on their buying process for 2 or 3 years. So we may well see a little peak in 2026, but then the manufacturers and some of the dealers have to realize that could be the peak from from the trough in 2024 and 25, where people were nervous to buy. So don't go mad and think, oh, it's on the uptake again. So there might be a peak, and then I think it will level out a little bit more. So that's the caravan crisis thing. I think there's my 2 pence on that. The other thing I heard through the grapevine, which was interesting, that there's been a change of leadership at Swift. Now, I had heard something several months ago, but I'd heard it and I wasn't supposed to know it. So I'd done a video of it thinking, oh, I'll do that. And I just checked with my source. Said, oh, am I supposed to know that? He said, no, don't say anything. So I didn't. And then I probably forgot about it. Now I've spoken to a couple of colleagues of mine that went up to the preview for Swift before they did a show. They talked to us about or to them about the new products and how to sell them. And Peter Smith, who's the OG of Swift, has now taken over the reins again. For whatever reason, I don't know. I always knew he was still kind of involved in it somehow, because I'd see him walking around the stand and things like that, but I didn't exactly know how or to what extent. But it sounds like from my source that he's come in and taken the reins again. And also we have Nick Page and Gary O'Brien, who have come back from kind of semi-retirement. Or it might not have been retired, I don't know, just gone on to do other things. But it's funny in the caravan industry, actually, we always see this. We see a rep or someone disappear from the caravan industry, and then because it's such a nice environment to work in, they always get dragged back in again. So the amount of times I've seen people say on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, oh, I'm leaving, I'm doing this, I'm going off to fix tennis rackets or whatever, and then 3 months later we see them back in the industry again. I think once you're in it, it's very difficult to come back out of it, especially because it's a small pool of knowledge. And they kind of, if someone finishes with one company, they may well go to another company because they've got that knowledge. So although I thought Nick and Gary had moved on, they've been brought back in again. Which I think is really good, because I've got massive respect for those guys, and I think they're going to do something pretty good with the company. Also, we've got Martin and Ben and everyone else in there as well, and it's a good bunch of people. So it felt, when I was speaking to my colleague, it felt really good. I had a kind of a real positive glow feeling of it. And then he said that they'd actually come back in and again, and they were really interested in stopping my major bugbear, which is why build something with an inherent issue in that about, which you just the warranty claims go in, and then the next year you build the caravan and it's still got that same issue in it, which you pretty much know is going to have a warranty claim in 3 or 4 years time. To me, it's a no-brainer to stop those. I kind of see the business as a big bucket of water, and you've got revenue coming in at the top, which is the water being poured in at the top from the sales and everything, and then you have the holes in the bottom of the bucket where the water's going out. I mean, the biggest one is tax. You can't do much about that. You've got another big hole in the bucket, which is fixed overheads. So you have cost of wages, and you have electricity and all that kind of stuff. You can't do a huge amount about that, but you've probably seen in the press that a lot of the manufacturers have reduced their wage bill. So that's one hole they can plug. One they can definitely plug is the warranty bill. So if you have I'd love to see the warranty figures of how much they spend on warranty each year. If you have an inherent issue that you keep repairing year after year after year, if you fix it from the manufacturing point of view, and you're not going to have the issue again, to me, again, that is a bit of a no-brainer. And that's the one thing that the manufacturers can do something about. I wouldn't say overnight, because it's not easy to change things. And there may well, you might have a piece of kit that builds a certain thing in a certain way, and you need another piece of kit to change that thing. And again, what my colleague said was that they spent, I can't remember, it was 19 or 21 million on new equipment and new processes. Either way, it's a significant amount of money to stop this this warranty bill from carrying on, because that solves two problems. It solves the hole in the bucket, where you've got revenue going straight out the bottom over to the dealers, but also it solves the PR issue, because say you go onto the forums and we all know what the issues are, because everyone's talking about them. That doesn't help if you've got someone going to go to the show next week, wanted to buy a caravan. If you've had one and you had one 3 or 4 years ago and it had a problem with a cant rail or whatever, you want to know that has been fixed. You don't want to go and buy another caravan and then be in the same situation 4 years down the road, or 3 years, or whatever it happens to be, where you've got a cant rail leaking again, or the sunroof broken. So the sunroofs have been fixed. We fitted our first sunroof in the new way this week, and I have to say it does look rather good. Unfortunately, we were promised that we should have a template in there, and there's no template. And I saw in front of a few friends of mine said, oh, we've got a spare template. They forgot to put one in the box. No, you don't get one. So that was a bit of a faux pas. Also, I got a bit of a ear bashing from one of my colleagues who was in the workshop. He said, I'm not doing another one until they come down and train me how to do it. So unfortunately, there was a bit of a lacking of training. There was a video of how to fit them, but it wasn't any good. And so basically my colleague said, look, just throw the rules out the window and work out how to fix it. And we did come up with a really good way of fixing it in, actually. So so yeah, that looked really good. So that's one thing that's certainly a positive. There's just a few other little things that they got to tweak, and I always pick on Swift a little bit because I know the things, but obviously I've done videos on Eldis. They're doing big things at the factory, and I'd love to talk about that a little bit more up at the show. Hopefully I'll be able to do an interview with Adam. I thought I could just have a chat with him, you know, over Skype or something and put it out on the internet, but it's not that simple. With a big corporate place like that, it's got to go through several layers of management, and then it's got to get all the questions checked and all this kind of thing. Obviously I was a bit naive. I could just have a chat and just talk about it, but that's not the case. So hopefully we're trying to sort something out with that. And like I said, Swift are doing this this new round of kind of development, which sounds like it's going to be good. So yeah, I haven't heard anything about Bailey, so they may well be doing something. But the good thing about this kind of crisis is that the manufacturers have to look at those holes in the bottom of the bucket, because if you're selling hundreds and hundreds of caravans and you've got loads of revenue coming in, you don't really worry about the bit that's dribbling out the bottom. But unfortunately, when that revenue comes in at the top and that dribble turns into a bit of a, you know, you look at it, well, actually that dribble's not so much of a dribble anymore, and we're losing money, and we don't need to be losing money. That is kind of a good thing. It's kind of, again, a reset with the manufacturers to kind of work out what's going on with the issues with their product. So I think that's really good. The new team come in again. I've said this with Eldis before, a kind of a new, it was the same, new brush sweeps clean or something like that. Although it's kind of an old brush. Sorry, people, calling you brushes, but you know, it's the older people that come back in again. At least they can kind of draw a line and go, right, you know, we can look at this with fresh eyes, because they've had a change. A break is as good as a rest. No, that's not right. Change is as good as a rest. So they can come in and look at it and think, right, okay, we're gonna shake this up, and we can't have this revenue going out the bottom of the bucket again. We've got to sort it out. So that's a waffle again. Sorry about that. So those are the two things I wanted to talk about. Hopefully I'll be doing a radio interview with Adam from Eldis up at the show next week. I'll be on the show. I'll be able to put the show on Tuesday and Wednesday at the Caravan radio stand. So if you want to come along and say hello, by all means do that. If you need any help buying caravans, or you know, any questions you got, I'll be there. I might stay longer. I'll just see how it goes. And I'll see, you know, if I don't get a punch on the nose from various people by talking out of turn. So hopefully not. But the thing about this is I can, if I am wrong about some of the things I'm saying, then what people tend to do is put you right, which is good. If I don't say anything about anything, then people just don't know anything. If I'm completely wrong and talking absolute rubbish, hopefully someone from Swift will come along and say, no, actually, you know, that's not the case, and then I can do a video and put myself straight. But then we get to the bottom of what's actually going on. Yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you at the show next week. If you go up there, come and see us at Caravan Radio Stand. And if you're thinking about going to the show and buying a caravan, then I really urge you to do that, and have a look at the manufacturers. They are all changing their way they're doing things, and they're all, you know, very keen to make sure that the products are better. So put your faith in them, and hopefully they won't let us down.